Not the phone call, not the drive home in the dark, not even the yellow tape stretched across the front porch of the house where I had lived for 22 years. What I keep coming back to, even now, is that she kissed me goodbye at the front door on a Friday morning in October 2023, and she seemed completely fine. I was 63 years old, 36 years of marriage, and I did not see any of it coming. I should start from the beginning, because there is no way to understand the end without it. My wife and I met in the fall of 1987. I was 27, working as a high school history teacher in Knoxville, Tennessee. She was 24, working at a dental office 2 blocks from the school where I taught. A mutual friend introduced us at a cookout on a Saturday afternoon, and by the following Wednesday we had talked on the phone every single night. Within 8 months, we were engaged. We married in June of 1989. We built something real. A house in a quiet subdivision outside Knoxville. 2 kids, a son who turned 32 this past spring, and a daughter who just turned 29. My son lives in Columbus, Ohio now with his wife and their 2 boys. My daughter lives in Chattanooga, about 2 hours south of us. She had her first baby, a girl, in August of 2023, just 2 months before everything fell apart. I retired from teaching in May of 2022 after 31 years. My wife had stopped working at the dental office years earlier and ran a small event planning business out of our home. Birthdays, retirement parties, the occasional small wedding. Nothing huge, but she loved it, and it gave her purpose. Or at least that is what I believed. Looking back now, I think the distance started sometime in early 2023. Not dramatic, not the kind of thing that would make you sit up straight and say, something is wrong here. It was subtle. She would be on her laptop when I woke up in the morning, and she would close it quickly when I walked into the room. She started taking calls in the backyard. She was quieter at dinner. When I asked what was on her mind, she would say, nothing, just tired. You know how the event season gets in the fall. I believed her. I want to be honest about that. I chose to believe her, maybe, because I did not want to know what was actually happening. 36 years does something to you. You build routines, habits, a shared language. The idea that something underneath all of it could be completely different from what you thought it felt too large to hold, so I just did not hold it. In September 2023, about 6 weeks before everything happened, she sat across from me at the kitchen table one evening and told me she needed more space. Not those words exactly. She said she felt like she was suffocating, that she needed room to think, that she loved me but she had been carrying something heavy and she needed time to figure it out on her own first. I asked her what she meant by carrying something. She said she could not explain it yet. She asked me to be patient. I said I would be patient. I did not ask more questions. I think about that a lot now. I had 36 years of evidence that she was a good person, a faithful wife, a devoted mother, and I let that evidence do all my thinking for me. I did not push. I did not say, no, you will explain this to me right now, because you are my wife and I deserve to know. I said I would give her space. I went to bed. She stayed up. I was a patient man. I had always been a patient man, and for the first time in my adult life, I understood that patience is not always a virtue. Sometimes it is just fear dressed up in a nicer word. In early October of that year, my daughter called me on a Tuesday afternoon. She said she was really struggling with the new baby, not sleeping, not eating well, feeling overwhelmed, and she asked if I could come down to Chattanooga for a long weekend and help out. I said of course, without hesitating. She is my daughter. Her baby was 6 weeks old. There was no version of that conversation where I said no. When I told my wife that evening, something crossed her face. Not sadness, not concern. Something I did not have a word for at the time. She nodded and said that sounded like a good idea. She told me to give my daughter her love. She asked how long I was planning to stay. I said probably Thursday through Sunday. 4 days. She said, okay, that sounds fine. I packed a bag on Wednesday night. On Thursday morning, she made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table together for about 20 minutes, talking about nothing in particular. My daughter, the baby, the weather. Then I stood up, put my bag in the car, and she walked me to the front door. She kissed me goodbye, held on a second longer than usual. I remember thinking, maybe things are getting better. Maybe she just needed to breathe. I told myself that. I drove 2 hours south to my daughter's house. I held my granddaughter for the first time without the fog of the hospital visit, just in the quiet of their living room on a Thursday afternoon, and I cried a little, which I am not embarrassed to admit. I helped with feedings. I made dinner. I fixed a leaking faucet in the bathroom. My son-in-law was grateful, and my daughter looked like some of the weight was lifting off her shoulders. On Saturday evening, I called my wife. The phone rang 5 times and went to voicemail. I left a message saying I was having a good time and asking her to call me back. She never called back. I told myself she was probably busy with an event. I sent a text. She replied 40 minutes later with a short message that said, "Everything is fine, enjoy the time with them, no punctuation," which was not like her. I did not sleep well on Saturday night. On Sunday, I planned to drive home in the afternoon. I was having lunch with my daughter and her husband when my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw it was my neighbor. He is a man I have known for nearly 20 years. We have had each other's numbers for as long as I can remember, the kind of neighbors who water each other's plants and sign for each other's packages and wave from driveways. Not close friends exactly, but good, reliable people. It was 11:47 in the morning when he called. I answered. He said, "I am sorry to bother you." His voice was strange, tight. I said, "No, it is no bother. What is going on?" He said, "There are police at your house right now. A lot of them. I thought you should know." I stood up from the table. My daughter looked at my face and immediately knew something was wrong. I asked him what he meant by a lot of them. He said there were 3 patrol cars, maybe 4, and an ambulance. He said they had been there since around 10 in the morning. He said he did not know what happened, but it looked serious, and he had not seen my wife come outside. I want to describe what happens to your body when someone says something like that. It is not panic, not immediately. It is more like the ground shifting under your feet very slightly, just enough that you have to look down to make sure you are still standing. My daughter was already up from the table, hand on my arm. I told my neighbor I was on my way. I hung up. I drove 90 miles an hour on the interstate for the first 30 minutes before I made myself slow down. I called my wife's number 3 times. Each time it rang and went to voicemail. The 4th time, a woman's voice answered and said, "This is Officer Danielle Reese with the Knox County Sheriff's Department. Is this the homeowner?" I said yes. She said, "Sir, where are you right now?" I told her. She said, "I need you to drive carefully and come to the house. I cannot give you details over the phone, but I need you to come here." The 2-hour drive took me 1 hour and 40 minutes. When I turned onto my street, I saw the lights before I saw the house, red and blue, still flashing, even in the middle of the day. There were 4 patrol cars, a sheriff's department vehicle, an ambulance, its back doors closed, parked at the curb, and yellow tape stretched across the front porch railing, from the mailbox post, across the shrubs my wife had planted the summer of 2010 because she said the front of the house needed more color. A deputy stopped me at the end of the driveway. I said, "I am the homeowner. I got a call." He nodded and told me to park on the street and follow him. They walked me around to the side gate, through the backyard, and into the house through the back door. The kitchen looked normal. The coffee maker was on the counter. There was a mug in the sink. They brought me through the hallway and into the living room, where 2 detectives were waiting for me. One of them introduced herself and said they needed to ask me some questions. I said, "Where is my wife?" There was a pause that lasted about 2 seconds and felt much longer. She said, "Your wife is alive. She is at the University of Tennessee Medical Center. She is in stable condition." I said, "What happened?" The detective said, "We will explain as much as we can, but first we need to ask you some questions about your whereabouts over the past 72 hours. I want to stop here for a moment, because I think this is important. I am 63 years old. I watched enough news to know what was happening. They did not know if I was a suspect. They did not know anything yet, and there is a part of you, in that moment, that wants to cooperate completely, to talk, to explain, to prove you had nothing to do with whatever happened, because talking feels like the natural thing to do when you are innocent. Do not do that. I had a neighbor whose son was a defense attorney in Nashville. I had heard him say it at a barbecue once, half joking, and it had stuck with me the way certain things stick for no clear reason. He had said, "The single most important thing you can do if police ever want to question you is to stop talking and call a lawyer. Innocent people confess to things every day because they think talking will make it better. It almost never does." I looked at the detective and I said, "I want to cooperate fully, but I would like to have an attorney present first." She said, "Of course, that is your right." I called my son in Columbus. He was on the road within 2 hours. While we waited, they told me the minimum. A man had been found in my living room. He had been shot once. He had been transported to the hospital, where he was listed in critical condition. My wife had been found in the hallway, injured but conscious. She had given a preliminary statement to the officers who arrived first on the scene. I sat in a chair in my own kitchen for 4 hours, while investigators moved through my house. I did not go into the living room. I do not know that I could have. My son arrived at 6 in the evening. He came through the back door and just stood there for a moment looking at me. He looked like he was 12 years old again, the way children look when they see their parents in a situation they cannot fix. He sat down next to me and did not say anything, which was exactly right. The attorney he had contacted, a woman who practiced in Knoxville, arrived within the hour. She spoke with the detectives, reviewed my wife's preliminary statement, and then sat down with me privately. I will not go through everything she told me. Some of it is still part of the legal record, but the outline of it was this. For approximately 14 months, my wife had been in contact with a man she had met through an online community for event planners. They had begun talking professionally, then personally. The relationship had developed into something beyond friendship. She had told him, several weeks before this happened, that she needed to end it. She said the relationship had been a mistake. She said she wanted to save her marriage. He did not take that well. On the morning of October 15th, 2023, while I was in Chattanooga, he came to our house without warning. She had not invited him. There was an argument. It became physical. She said he grabbed her by the arm and shoved her against the wall in the hallway. She said she fell. She said when she looked up, he was moving toward her, and she was afraid of what he was going to do next. There was a firearm in our house, a handgun I had kept in the bedroom closet for nearly 15 years. Legal. Registered. Something we had discussed when we moved into the neighborhood because there had been a string of break-ins 2 streets over. She knew it was there. She went to the bedroom. She came back. He was still in the house. She fired once. He survived. He spent 11 days in the hospital and was transferred to a rehabilitation facility. He was subsequently charged with criminal trespass, assault, and a separate count related to the nature of their prior relationship. My wife was charged with aggravated assault. The district attorney's office reviewed the case for 6 weeks before making a final determination on charges. Her attorney argued self-defense throughout. The jury was not entirely persuaded. In March of 2024, she was convicted of aggravated assault with a firearm and sentenced to 8 years in the Tennessee Department of Corrections, with eligibility for parole after serving 4 years. That means the earliest she could appear before a parole board is March of 2028. Not sooner. I sat in the courtroom on the day of sentencing and I did not know what I was feeling. Grief, probably, for the marriage, for the life I thought we had, for the woman I thought I knew and clearly did not know as well as I believed, for my children, who had to sit in that room and watch their mother be led out in handcuffs. My son stared straight ahead. My daughter cried quietly, holding her baby against her chest. You go through stages after something like this. The first stage, for me, was numbness. I came home to a house that had yellow tape across the front porch and strangers in latex gloves going through my living room, and for the first 2 weeks I functioned on autopilot. I made coffee. I answered phone calls. I met with attorneys. I slept, somehow. The second stage was anger. Not at my wife, not exactly, at myself. At the version of me that had watched her close her laptop and go take phone calls in the backyard and say, "I am just tired" for 8 months, and had let it go. At the patient man who had told himself he was being mature and understanding when what he was actually doing was looking away. I thought about that goodbye kiss at the front door for a long time. She held on a second longer than usual. I still do not know what that meant. Whether she was saying goodbye to me, to us, to the life she was about to burn down, I may never know. The third stage was something quieter and harder to name, a kind of recalibration, looking at 36 years of memories and trying to figure out which ones were real and which ones were real but incomplete. The camping trips, the hospital rooms for each kid, the arguments and reconciliations, the Sunday mornings, the ordinary evenings that make up most of a life. Were those true? I decided, eventually, that they were. That a person can love someone genuinely and also make devastating choices. That both things can be real at the same time. I am not sure that makes it easier, it just makes it more honest. My son came down from Columbus 4 times in the first year. He stayed for long weekends, helped me fix things around the house, sat with me on the back porch in the evenings. He did not push me to talk about it when I did not want to talk, and he was there to listen when I did. I will not say he stepped up, because that phrase implies he was doing something extra, something above and beyond what was required. He was just being my son. But I noticed it. I told him, once, that I noticed it. He looked a little embarrassed and said, "You would have done the same." He is right, I would have. My daughter and I talked more than we ever had. She called me almost every day in the first 6 months. Some days we talked about her mother. Many days we talked about the baby, about her husband, about what she was watching on television and what I had made for dinner. The ordinary things. I think she understood that I needed the ordinary things as much as I needed someone to process the grief with. The house was hard, there is no other way to say it. Every room had a memory attached to it, and some of those memories had changed their character entirely. The living room took the longest. For the first 2 months I avoided it almost completely, eating at the kitchen table, watching television in the bedroom. My son, on one of his visits, said, "You have to go back in there." Not as a command, just as a fact. He sat with me while I did, the two of us on the couch watching a football game, and nothing terrible happened, and then the room was just a room again. I had the carpet replaced in November of 2023. Sometimes you just have to replace the carpet. My wife and I spoke twice in the first year after sentencing. Both times were brief, a few minutes each, through the visitation phone system at the facility. The first time, she cried for most of the call. I did not know what to say, so I mostly listened. The second time, she said she was sorry. She said she knew that word was not large enough for what she had done. She was right about that. I said, "I hear you," which was all I could honestly say. There are people in my life, friends from the years, who have strong opinions about what I should do. Some believe I should file for divorce immediately, cleanly, finally. Some believe that 36 years means something that cannot simply be discarded. My attorney told me I could file on grounds of the conviction. My pastor, a man I have known for 15 years, said he would support whatever decision I came to. I have not made a final decision yet. I am aware that this surprises some people. A man of 64, 65 now, who stays in a holding pattern when the practical answer seems obvious to everyone around him. But I think there is a difference between the practical answer and the honest answer, and I am old enough now to know that I want to live with the honest one, even if it takes longer to arrive. What I know is this: I wake up every morning in a house that is quieter than it used to be. I drink my coffee at the kitchen table. I call my daughter on most mornings and talk to my granddaughter, who is 2 years old now and says my name in a way that makes me laugh every time, and I think about how she will grow up knowing her grandfather as a person who stayed present, who did not disappear into bitterness or self-pity, who showed up. I drive up to Columbus 4 or 5 times a year and take my grandsons to baseball games and pretend I do not notice how much they look like my son when he was their age. I teach an afternoon history class twice a week at a community center for adults. I started doing it in the spring of 2024 just to have somewhere to be, and then I realized I had missed it more than I knew. There is something about the act of teaching the back and forth of it. Someone asking a question you have heard 100 times, but answering it like you mean it, that keeps you tethered to the present in a way that is hard to replicate. Last January, I received a letter. It came in an official envelope with the facility's return address, and I knew before I opened it what it would be. She wrote that she had been attending counseling, that she had spent a great deal of time, more than she thought she was capable of, looking honestly at the choices she had made and the person she had been in the years leading up to what happened. She said she was not writing to ask for anything. She said she understood if I never wanted to hear from her again. She said she was writing because she wanted me to know, from her, not through attorneys or court records or second-hand accounts, who she had been and what she had done and how deeply she understood the damage of it. The letter was 6 pages. I read it twice. Then I set it on the kitchen table and I sat there for a while, looking at the handwriting I had seen on birthday cards and grocery lists and little notes left on the counter for 36 years. I have not written back yet. I do not know if I will. I think about the patient man who stood at the front door on a Friday morning in October and did not ask the questions he should have asked. And I think about who I want to be now, not out of anger at him, not to correct him or punish him, but simply because I am still here, still moving, still choosing, one morning at a time. My granddaughter says my name like it is the best word she knows. I am still here. That is enough, for now, to build something from.